Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome to another episode of The Ways We Move, the podcast that highlights innovative mobility solutions and the people bringing you these solutions. My name is Nicholas Zart, and I am your host on this podcast. And I'm always laughing because every time I'm about to say, and we have another special guest with us today, well, you know what? We're always going to have special guests with us because our industry is extremely exciting, the industry I work in, which is advanced air mobility. And because the people who are in it, well, they're fantastic people for the most part. Of course, there are always a rotten apple out there, right? But for the most part, those who come on this show are people I know, people I've had the pleasure to have worked with, at least beginning to work with. So I'm excited to bring this next guest. And the reason why I'm also smiling is because for some reason people can't pronounce his name. And his name is very simple. It's Darshan Divakaran or Darshan Divakaran. Short Dash. In short, we call him Dash. And so we have a really funny, I don't know if we actually recorded it, but we were joking about that, how people have to call him Dash because, well, Divakaran is not that difficult to say. And, well, my goodness, Darshan is probably even easier to say. So, anyway, Dash, as we've come to know him over the years, is someone I've known for many years. I've listened to him when back in the early days of the vertical flight societies about a decade or so ago, and I always was impressed by his expertise when it comes to well, aviation in general, but also his keen understanding of what AAM, Advanced Air Mobility, was shaping up to be. He has worked with AFWERX. He was actually head of airspace and innovation at AFWERX, and that was the military aspect of how do we bring all the stakeholders to work together for advanced air mobility. And that had introduced something that is very near and dear to us, the dual use of any technology, meaning not just for military, but also for civilian and vice versa. By the way, this is something that we're pushing through in Europe, especially in Portugal, a lot, hoping to make Portugal an AAM testing ground kind of place where you can all come over there and test your drones, your eVTOLs, your eSTOLs, and your eCTOLs. So with Dash, we talk about the startup world, the startup mentality, especially when it comes to AAM, and we talk about also how some startups may view the DoD, the Department of Defense in the USA, as a cash flow machine. Well, it's not, and it can help you, but it has to fit into many pieces in order for you to find any money for your R&D. So Dash has some very interesting words of wisdom for you to follow because especially these days when of course there are less funds going to this industry and everything that is happening, which we will not get into. But anyway, without further ado, yet another interesting and amazing person who works in AAM, a good friend of ours, Darshan Divakaran, or short for Dash, or Dash is short for his name, I should say, right? So, Dash, take it away. All right, Dash. Well, please introduce yourself. Who is Dash? Where do you come from?
Thank you. Firstly, thank you for the invitation. My name is Darshan Divakaran, short form Dash. It's not a call sign, did not get it from DoD, but as people butchered my name, I had to keep it short, and eventually it became more like a call sign in the DoD and stuff. So, yeah, myself, Dash. I'm currently the president of Aravut LLC. It's a boutique certified cleared consulting and an advisory firm headquartered in Raleigh. We have a lean team, small team, but our focus is emerging aerospace, defense, and national security efforts and stuff. So we work with startups, we work with government, and yeah, that's what I do right now.
That's it in a nutshell. And actually, it really doesn't portray how many things you have done, how many things you've been doing, and you're one of those voices I love in the industry because you really know what's going on. You've been around also for a little bit of some time, and I wanted to pick your brain a little bit on maybe sort of a where we were, where we are, and where do you think we're going when it comes to advanced air mobility. So, you know how we used to think 10 years ago we would hop from building top to building top and where we are today. What's your take on all of that?
Sure, yeah. Let me put let me go back a little bit and put a context to my background and how I'm positioned to, understand where the industry is going and what we are doing right now, and take a lot of the good from the past that we can use as examples, lessons learned, and stuff. So, background wise, my background is in aeronautics, engineering, remote sensing. So, I've been in this space for a decade now, and over a decade, yeah, and I started on the manned aviation space. I'm a commercial pilot, so I started on the manned aviation space. I love the airspace. I want to fly not just my aircraft, but other aircrafts, be it manned or be it remotely piloted. So transitioning from it was a big decision to give up my dream of flying for an airline and then moving into drones. So I was working for NC State University and was pursuing my master's in remote sensing and GIS, and that is when I was introduced to drones. Drones, this is about 2013, 2014 I'm talking about. So drones is not, or at that time wasn't a new name. It basically existed in the military, DoD
True.
side, and in the commercial, a lot of the areas that drones were being utilized was for research and agriculture. So crop analysis, water analysis, soil analysis, flying over wide farms to see how the crops are growing, where there infestation going on, and all those things. So a lot of research areas, and that's when I also started understanding different use cases on what drones could be basically used for. And so we had a program there, and it was under the Institute for Transportation Research and Education, and a lot of agencies, organizations, companies that were either developing UAVs or trying to understand about UAVs would come and try to see if X, Y, and Z is possible. Like right now, we know bridge inspection, road inspection, you have your airport inspection, a lot of things that we already heard about, disaster response, drone delivery and stuff. But this is around the time when people used to think, is this possible? And would come and ask our program, can we do this? And we would go and test it out. So I came from a time when drones was not seen as a technology. And myself and the folks that I've been working with along the way, some amazing teams that I've been part of, I've led, they have been key to seeing what is an idea and execute it into operations. And from there, I've been involved in many programs. But that's when I transitioned from the research space, got into the state, worked for North Carolina Department of Transportation. I was brought in as an executive consultant to help build the program. And the vision was to always create a collaborative environment where it is not a individual led program, but a team led program. So it continues growing. So we did a lot of efforts with drones. We got drones into infrastructure inspections, disaster response, emergency management, drone delivery. North Carolina is the foundation for drone delivery now. A lot of companies that you hear today, like UPS Flight Forward, Flightrex, Zipline, they
Yeah.
all are operating from North Carolina under the that time it was called the FAA Integration Pilot Program. Now it's beyond, which the North Carolina Department of Transportation is leading. And started out there, worked with other states. This is when I stood up my company in 2017 to help not just North Carolina, but other states as well. Been involved with Arizona, Ohio, Utah, DC. So I started understanding how the drone industry is exploding basically. A lot of new technologies coming in, related sensors, related capabilities, software side, and
Yeah.
then the whole new area of, okay, when we have so many drones, how are you going to manage it? Then the unmanned traffic management discussion started, working with NASA, FAA. We were involved in a lot of pilot programs. We were working on those efforts. And I started realizing that this is beyond just flying drones. This is just beyond Part 107. Now you're talking about a whole new industry being developed called advanced air mobility, where people initially called it drone taxis, or if you're
Yes.
looking at the medical side, they would call it drone ambulance, and they would
Yeah.
be like passenger flying drones. And they envisioned a luxury transportation, then they envisioned life-saving transportation. So the industry kept growing. A lot of key players at that time, Uber and Joby and all, started becoming a prominent name, then Archer, Beta, all these companies. And, this is when I also transitioned from, I had worked with university, I had with research experience, I worked with industry, I worked with state and local, federal. What was missing was the defense side of it. And around the 2020, when during COVID, an important program was launched in the DoD called Agility Prime, and this was under AFWERX. And this is when the whole industry, their perspective shifted. People imagined this to be 2040, 2050 efforts, started thinking about it can happen now. And DoD at that time, their focus was clear. Electric revolution. They wanted to see what electric, propulsion, electric batteries are capable of doing. They wanted to see how they can scale autonomy. What is autonomy and how can you scale it? They wanted to see about supply, manufacturing, supply chain side of it. So these were, the main focus for the DoD was to understand what the future transportation or future mode of passenger cargo capability is going to be, and how do we make it happen in both civil as well as defense space. Defense has its own applications, own use cases, but you don't want to develop something in a silo. That's where, Agility Prime opened up the doors to the nation, even international. They wanted to see what is the tech, where does the tech go towards, and how can we influence a lot of legacy systems, legacy aircrafts to be replaced by future aircrafts, or how do we encourage the future designers of aircrafts and technologies on what the requirements are. So a lot of those things were the key foundation of the DoD program. Uh, and rest is history, where a lot of the companies have got good financial support as well as good
Right.
partnership with the DoD, which extended to getting support from the commercial side as well as international, opening up the doors to
Right.
various countries working in a collaborative environment. So I've been part of the journey where I still remember holding a small drone in my hand and thinking, is this a long-term career? And an aircraft going above me, and I'm thinking, I want to be flying commercially, and what am I sitting here holding a drone in my hand, which half the people I used to meet used to call it a toy. And they would be like, my little
Yeah.
one is flying this.
Yep.
So what do you do actually? I'm like, that's
Yep.
not the same technology. So yeah, it's interesting how industry is changing. But one clear thing which keeps me excited in this is that it's not, uh, it's not like stationary. The industry is
Right.
not like, okay, this is it. We cannot do beyond this. It's like every
No.
few months or every year,
Yep.
we see how much the technology can be pushed, how much you can accelerate this. And sometimes they blame the policy as the limitation, sometimes the technology as the limitation, funding as the limitation. Limitations exist because you're pushing the boundaries. So that's good.
Absolutely. It's
If
a
you
good
don't
thing.
put means you won't hit the limitations.
Yeah.
So it's exciting time, and I think that's where where your question on where we were and where we are going or where we are right now would be more applicable. So I hope I set the foundation to why I can give my perspective. Again, these are just my thoughts. This is not, I want to say this is my company's perspective. This is the organizations I work for their perspective. This is just a personal, thought, like where we are going, where we are, and what, we can take from there. So to answer the first question, where we came from, I would say AAM did not, emerge overnight. It's not something that one morning someone woke up and said, there's advanced air mobility. It's built over decades of, work with aerospace, air traffic management, and, drone integration. So a lot of this influenced what AAM is today. And you can say even a lot of the early US programs laid the groundwork for what agencies like NASA, AFRL, and the FAA are, investigating on how the electric propulsion, autonomy, and airspace safety is. So that's where we came from. It's like we saw technology drones, we saw how it could benefit the rest of the nation, and then we said, why not bigger? Why not? faster? Why not use it for a specific gap in transportation that exists? Short distance, mid range, those type of things. So, we came from that sort of a uh, time frame on the AAM side, and where we are today. Uh,
Well,
I would say,
before
yeah,
we get to where we are today, let's because you said so many great things here that need to be highlighted. Is you said the one thing that really stands out is drone technology is not new. This is when I think of advanced air mobility, which I think we should even call innovative air mobility because everything changes all the time. But drones have been around for a long time, and you rightfully highlighted, especially on the surveillance side of things, not just military. There's a dual use to almost everything, but train railways systems, right, have had drones of making sure their rail lines are still in good condition, catenary and things like that. So it's really an industry that has morphed and grown in leaps and bounds. And of course, the case use applications have just multiplied all over the place. Another thing you said too is Agility Prime. You guys were the very first ones, I think, almost all around the world to introduce the dual use aspect of a technology, not just for military, but also for civilian use. And that, by the way, gave birth to a lot of what we have today, where we have a lot of drones just looking for, traffic accidents, just things that help us out and everything. And of course, we can get into facial recognition and things like that, which scares people. It's still good technology, but definitely, yeah. And I think you guys have done an incredible amount of work on that. And then after we talk about the present and the future, I want to come back to also a split that somewhere along the line has happened, and you actually said it really well. We used to hear things like drone carrying passengers and things like that, which just made no sense. Then there's a rift between passengers and drones, but we'll get back to that after you talk about where we are today and where do you think we're going tomorrow. But that great points. Thanks for saying that.
absolutely. I think, conversation wise, there's a lot to discuss. And, with the interest of time, I want to make sure we hit the clear points. And again, we don't want to be repetitive to all the other great things that's already been talked about. But yeah, that's why I said my perspective on this may be slightly different because I've been in different seats. I've been the approver of, funding. I have been giving funding. I have
Oh
requested
yeah.
funding, all sides of it. So I have been closely involved in every aspect of it, and I think that's where we are right now is you may have already heard it's like a critical inflection point. This is where
Yes.
we have already proven that the technology should exist.
Yes.
But now comes the big part of it is scaling the operations, the safety. How do we integrate it within the airspace? How do we earn public trust? All these things are key things which cannot be overlooked, and it cannot be done by the company themselves. Let's make that also
Yep.
clear. If a company
Yeah.
wants to do everything on their own, you're putting burden to already a lot of issues that you're dealing with. And what you have to try and understand is that because this is a critical point, you want a collaborative environment. You want to create an ecosystem where you have all the right players focusing on the right pain points and solving
Yeah.
those.
So,
This is
I
where
what which that is so important what you're saying, especially right now. So this is July 14th, 2025. And if you've been following everything that's been happening, there's a lot of funding, defunding, shenanigans going everywhere. And the one thing that we're all walking away from, I think we can pretty much all agree on that, is the important and crucial role the FAA and NASA has in this industry, right? We've seen the shortcomings of ODA, right? I mean, it works in theory, but in practice, it doesn't really work all that well, at least for a lot of things. It works for some things. So, yeah, NASA needs to do that work, and they're the only ones who can do it really well. Third party, done deal. So, yeah, I think that is a very sore subject right here that we need to hopefully resolve sooner than later. I'm sorry, I wanted to interrupt that because it is such a good point that you made there.
And the thing is, you also have to have this is the a critical time when you have to have patience also because there is a lot of changes happening, administration changes, leadership changes, funding changes, and that doesn't mean you have to wait for the changes to be done and then only react. What do you
Yeah,
do
no.
during that time is getting yourself prepared, and this is
Yes.
where you want to create that collaborative environment. If you want
Yes.
to integrate an aircraft into the airspace, there's different elements. You want to get your aircraft certified, there's different elements, and sometimes you feel like I can do everything in-house. I can hire, we have the money, we can hire a bunch of people. But the thing is, you're delaying that progress and you're missing on
Absolutely.
the opportunity. So I'm a big believer in collaborative environment. That's where Agility Prime also, when they were launched, the clear focus. So I was the first government civilian hire for Agility Prime to help build the program. We had
Okay, I
amazing
didn't know.
people who came in, and we had both uniformed as well as civilians, contractors, and they were all amazing in what they're doing. But we created a collaborative environment where we worked with FAA, NASA, US DOT. We also worked across the DoD with various services, because end of the day, you also have to think that AFWERX and Agility Prime wasn't the end user of this technology. We were connecting you to the end user, but we also were connecting you to the decision makers. We were connecting you to the ecosystem, the validation, testing spaces, all these things. We had partnerships with NASA where the companies that came through after the prime would come and do their testing, wind tunnel testing, then secondary testing, all these different testing efforts and stuff. So that collaborative environment is what is key for the Agile Prime success.
Absolutely.
And all
Absolutely.
those
Yeah, because
programs.
AAM is so varied and so big anyway, you need to have not a centralized point, but an efficient sort of platform for everybody to interact. And you guys play that role to the T. Absolutely.
And that's the thing, there is going to be efforts like these, collaborative teamings like these, there's going to be funding opportunities like these, but these are going to end. Then there's going to be another opportunity. So you should always keep a lookout for where the next funding opportunity, the next
Yes.
collaborative. You cannot expect one entity to keep paying all through the progress. So if you used
That's
money from, and especially if you think about it like this, if you focused on R&D and developing your system, you got the money for R&D. Now when it comes to scaling and manufacturing and stuff, that's a different part of money that you have
that's a
to go
different
after.
part. Absolutely. Absolutely. You highlighted a very important point here, and I think it's something that needs to be said because you're right. There's a lot of unspoken understanding that we'll just go to the DoD and get funded for this and get funded for that and everything. And there's this idea that deep buckets, endless amounts of money coming our way, but that's not the case at all. You have to be really careful of that. Plus, you have to be smart enough to not pull too much on the string in general. But yeah, that's a very good point you're making here. Is I think it's a big myth, and it's an unspoken myth too, which is always a little scary when you listen to some startups coming up and said, "Oh, we'll just get the DoD to pay for it."
Yeah.
No,
That's
no,
the thing. Any new technology takes a little time for organizations to adjust, to learn. In that process, yes, a couple of companies, pass through those gaps, get money, but their technology never sees its day. But the companies that really have good technology, needs to work patiently, but also really
yes,
to understand that you have to keep moving forward. You cannot
yes,
just be comfortable and assume that DoD is going to do everything. DoD is going to, the funding that comes is also one is to help the U.S. Manufacturers, the U.S. Innovation to succeed,
yes,
but also that technology needs to find its place to our war fighters and our soldiers. It has to reach there. It's not invest in R&D for the rest of your life. It doesn't happen that way. R&D needs to transition to a technology, to a program of record. And that is where programs will come, funding will come. Some programs will survive, some programs will die. But the lessons learned from that helps set the foundation for the next industry, the next technology, the next innovations. You understand where electric propulsion has its limitation. Is it
yeah,
hydrogen? Is it any other sort of alternate fuel that is going to be the alternate solution? Unless you know what the limitations are, you cannot think
yes,
about alternate solutions. So these are things where DoD is working to understand these things, but there's limitations. And this is where if one company is getting funding from one source, doesn't mean that 100 companies are going to get from the same source. And that is where eventually
yes,
you have to, eventually there's going to be companies that are going to move forward faster. Some will take time, but this is not a race. It doesn't mean that the companies that go, finish first, they get their certification, they get aircrafts out. It doesn't mean that the other companies in the back have lost anything. they're going to get even more smarter because they know what are the requirements. They know where the business cases are, what is the best market to go after, and they can approach with a better aircraft. So, there isn't a finish line for one, two, or three winners. There's a finish line for a whole new industry to move forward with. So that is where we have to be very crucial, that this is where we are in that critical point that some companies are thinking, oh, DoD has shut the funding. Now we have to pivot to international markets. You can think about all these things, but to the point that nothing is closed forever. Doors open, and it opens in different ways.
And I think you guys did a really good job with that. I mean, like I said, you were a neutral platform to bring everybody together, and but I think at the same time, I think it's really hard to expect startups to have figured out everything about their strategy, right? I mean, it's really difficult. You might be really good in technology, you might be really good in understanding the community aspect of it or X, Y, Z's, and so yeah, probably a lot of them showed up, maybe not fully understanding, and again, you're working with a skeleton group, right? You're not working with a big full fledged company, but you guys have already done a good job about it. It has to be practical. It has to be dual use. And so it was really exciting to see what you guys were doing. And I mean, I'm still in touch with some of the companies that went through it, Vertigo Aero are still moving forward and they're doing a pretty good job, one of the many, many, many companies. But that's a very good point about this is what happens when these funds are intelligently used, and it gives birth to that. And of course, that helps the United States overall, and the rest of the world too. Everybody participates in this whole industry of ours. So moving forward and understanding, our past, our present a little bit better. How do you see advanced air mobility or innovative air mobility evolving going forward?
Sure. And to answer that question also, you brought up a good point, like uh, companies beyond just the AAM aircraft, but also battery
Yeah.
technology, sensor
Yes.
technology. I remember one of the programs we funded for a operations center, a digital tactical operations center. These were all part and parcel of the whole AAM sector. So the next, 5 to 10 years will be basically focusing on harmonizing the policy, the tech,
Yep.
and the missions, because a lot of the technologies have not directly been applicable for a specific mission. They are trying to be mission agnostic, but you have specific vehicles for specific mission. You have specific use cases that you have to focus on. So that is where policy harmonization, tech harmonization, mission harmonization is key. And looking from from medical drone, medical delivery to logistics to defense mobility, and this all has to be done in a contested logistics, and that's the important thing. You have to work in an environment which is ever changing. You have to think about where infrastructure will not exist, because a new industry gets created does not mean we have to invest a lot of money to get it right. There's also we have to get
Yeah.
the early use cases, early successes with the limited infrastructure that you have. So you have to start thinking about contested environment, but you also have to think about the real world. In real world operations, how are you going to move these aircrafts and all these things? And next 5 to 10 years is going to be important. And you know,
Yeah.
rural, urban, there's so many
Yeah.
use cases in each of them.
Yeah. And that's also another good point is, we're working with a future. So nothing is really set in stone right now. And you do need, I actually have wait, hold on a sec. I have a crystal ball. And I love bringing in my crystal ball because it's one of the best things I've ever. But if I wish I could see into that, because I would go, oh, then spend all the money on that technology, this, that technology, that. But we are working on something that is moving all the time, that is changing all the time. It really is like an onion, and you're peeling out the layers, and you think, finally, nope, there are the layers and everything. On top of which, you also mentioned something that makes a lot of sense too. Is when I look at the plethora of different types of eVTOLs, eSTOLs, ECTOLs, I'm also amazed at how many of them encroach on some of the operations of the others. In other words, where does an eVTOL really stop? And if there's no demark, like hard demark between what an eVTOL does, what an eSTOL does, what an eCTOL does, and even what a drone does, because at one point or another, they do encroach on each other. So And that keeps on evolving because we don't know exactly what the aerospace is going to look like. We don't know exactly where is the demand. I mean, we know where the demand is, but the demand is going to change, obviously. So all of that is it's kind of like moving a target, and it's pretty hard to actually do it well. So
Oh,
thanks
yeah.
for pointing that out.
And so that's why I think the next 5 to 10 years will be about, blending the civil and military needs because you want to, accelerate this technology. You don't want to build a technology that's only applicable for defense and only applicable for civil because that's going to take time with all the other, requirements like certification, integration, and stuff. Thinking about from the perspective of interoperable infrastructure, you have to think about air, ground, communications, which blend into everything. You cannot think about, I'm going to invest, it's say from the states or federal perspective, you're going to be like, let's spend money in all these, advanced air mobility sector. And then when it comes to autonomous ground transportation or maritime, now how do we don't have money for that. That's another 10 years. No. So
Yeah,
interoperability is
nope.
very important. So this is where the next 5 to 10 years is where you're also going to be focused on public-private partnership, which drives the
Yes.
commercialization.
Yeah.
And to get money from the commercial side, you have to show that to the defense to get matching. You
Of
get
course.
defense funding, you show that to the commercial to get matching. That is important in the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, you said something that makes me feel really good. For the last 2 3 years, I've been really stressing the fact that look, AAM is not a silo. Don't think of it as a silo. It'll never work as a silo. It's part of aviation, but aviation is part of mobility. And by the way, yeah, it includes where are the closest railroad lines? Where are the closest sea routes? Where are you saw? I don't know if you saw. SkyDrive is always does really interesting things for me, but they've partnered with guess who? The local railroad companies because wow, wouldn't it be great if you get out from that train station and you have direct access to a business center, to a downtown center? Most of the time, train stations are downtown, but there are lots of other centers around that. And I think that's pretty crucial is that you cannot look at it as a single silo industry. It's all related. And maybe another term we should have is called, innovative mobility or something like that. Just forget about air, sea, and land. It's all about mobility. How do we facilitate the human mobility experience? And that's what we're pretty much all working on. So yeah, thanks for saying that. That's been a great point for many of us for you years right now.
And last, this is the third year that we're going to be doing it, but in 23, yes, 25, 23, we did the first NC Advanced Mobility Symposium. The focus was air, land, and maritime, and how to unify this from a state perspective, bringing the state agencies together and stuff. This year we'll be doing the third time, and our goal has always been is to bring the technology to to the end users that could also be a decision makers, your funding authorities, but have a conversation to understand what is possible today rather than what is possible 5 years from now. You cannot invest in setting up vertiports and all these infrastructure unless you know where the direction is going. If the state's 2030 plan does not have AAM in it or autonomous shuttles or autonomy integrated into it, you have a bigger problem now. You have to educate them what is autonomy, what is AAM,
Yes.
what is US, and I've worked with states where the defense entities or the defense bases don't even know who their state agent, that respective state
Yeah,
agencies
I
are.
know.
And like we are investing in all this infrastructure, but we haven't even communicated on how it can benefit each other or how we can leverage each other's funding towards a collaborative infrastructure. Those things are where, we are dealing with. And I think this is where advanced air mobility limits it to just air, but advanced mobility or innovation, innovative mobility speaks about what the future of autonomous systems could look like and what is required from a digital as well as physical infrastructure.
Yeah, I think yeah, and you also highlight another point. It's the potential of advanced air mobility is to become really or to usher this integrative mobility approach to everything. If you think about it, we had horse carriages where you couldn't add more horses or go faster or anything like that. Steam engine took over. Then we dropped that and we went to cars, and then we're kind of dropping that. Now we're thinking aviation that also came in slightly after and everything. But now it's like, well, I mean, short of Hyperloop, I don't know what else we can come up with, right? Obviously. But now it's a time to wrap it all together now into something a little bit more coherent, cohesive too, and more integrative. And where do you stop? And very lastly to that point, ask any 20-year-old right now. They don't care. They just want to tap on that app and get somewhere, whether they use a nuclear submarine or a Hyperloop. It doesn't matter to them. They just want to get there and continue their experience. So this is the one thing we have to keep in mind. Hence, also another thing too is, I would also caution a lot of companies to don't be driven solely on technology. Be driven by demand use, case use. That's really the most important thing, because great technologies are great, but without really targeting the right clientele, then yeah, it's just not going to do anything, and you're going to be wasting money and time too. So yeah, all great point. I'm very excited about everything you said. Is It's exactly what I had to hope for. So one thing that, and by the way, you're welcome to always come back, right? You know that. So this is just we're just scratching the surface here. We're 30 minutes into our podcast. Usually by now, I'd like to kind of ask a little bit more questions around, who are you showing up to do these crazy things where you could be, like you said, an airline pilot, their loss, our gains, by the way, or a drone operator or something like that. What motivates you to continue working in this industry that's always, always tomorrow, and it is becoming tomorrow and tomorrow more so. So what's your motivation?
Absolutely. My motivation, I think, is driven by safety because I feel like uh, every step of the way where I was introduced to a new technology or a new problem or even a new capability, I thought, okay, we could outsource this and get somebody else to solve the problem. But I was pretty confident that I could solve this myself and put the right people to work alongside me to make this happen. And that's where safety has been the key focus there because I've seen, incidents and situations where when you lapse on your safety cases, you overlook safety and you get used to that habit that okay, I've done this 10 times, 11 times is it's going to be easy. No. So this is where when I started my flying, when I started my aviation career, like flying commercial, and I this was during my private pilot training. I told my talking to my dad, and my dad is a veteran himself in the commercial aviation. He flew for multiple airlines and stuff. He was a flight engineer, and so he's spent time in the cockpit. It started out with a five-person crew in the
I was gonna
cockpit,
say, yeah, he was a
and then
navigator, the one who had to put everything together, make sure everything worked. Yeah.
so from there it went, and flight engineer was last person to be
Yep.
removed out of the cockpit,
Yep.
and then has safety has the safety record been better? It's getting better, but then one-off incidents changes the thought, like can
Yeah.
we remove the second person out of there and make it a one-person crew? Can we remove the pilot out of the aircraft completely? There's a lot of questions there, but there's safety here is the key thing. And why I brought that story up is because my dad told me, like during my training, that every landing at the same airport is going to be like a first time landing.
Different.
So you cannot just
Absolutely.
because you land once, yeah, because I was like, I'm operating out of this airport and it's so easy and it's so much fun. I nowadays don't even look at, I was like, I don't even need to focus on my instruments. I'm so good at it. And my dad is like, every landing is a new landing. And that's where
Yes.
I realized that we take things for granted, and if we compromise on safety, we are going to, we're not going to accelerate innovation in any way. So, when I started working with drones, I said I could do this better. Let me try this out, and I realized where my limitations are and putting a team
Yes.
together. So this is where I started learning more about technology, and every time I learn something new, I want to integrate it. I want to, help others in that space. So that's where worked in different sectors, and now as the president of AirAware, our main goal has been is how do we take early startups, mid-sized startups who have good ideas, good concept, point them in the right direction, give them the right guidance, get them the right end users, the funding to take their concept to prototype to market. And it's important because a lot of folks, and this is especially, we work extensively in the defense side, but we work overall with federal agencies. A lot of companies enter the defense space or federal space and they get lost because
Yes.
there are many
Yes,
domains.
absolutely.
If you don't have a reliable advisor to guide you, you're not going to move forward. Rather, you'll be circling around, and that is where that's what excites me is when I work with new technologies, I can provide them all the decade of experience I have towards pointing them in the right direction. And in the process, I get to learn about their technology. They get to learn about how to navigate with the government. And, uh, as I mentioned earlier, it's a collaborative environment. When I work with
Yes.
teams, I try to learn from them. I try to provide them the right guidance. And, it's end of the day, if you stop learning, the excitement ends. So that's
Gosh, yes. No.
like day one, again, holding the drone in the hand, and a decade later, seeing the vision of passenger and cargo being transported from with a larger aircraft. Just happy that every day when I wake up, I have a job and I have a bunch of companies that I'm supporting.
Absolutely. You said something that was really interesting. Complacency kills, really, but it actually stems from the good old days of rails. Like in the steam engine era, you had a conductor per machine, and wherever that machine went, the conductor went. Right. So they knew every single nut and bolt. But when we switched over to diesel electricity, the conductor started changing machines all the time. One thing that they finally found out is despite these machines being all the same, they each had a little bit of a quirk, right? But that they made sure to, yeah, I know this railroad really well. I know this slope. I know this, if it's rainy, this, and that. But they still had to be careful. They still had to never let go of that. And especially when you're in Europe, trains were barreling down on 125 miles per hour. Well, it takes 5 to 10 kilometers to slow down to come to a full stop, right? So you can't let go of that. So we have about 5 minutes left. What would be the one thing you would like our viewers to walk away from what we've talked today, and maybe even the younger ones out there? What would be the one message you'd like to give them right now?
Sure. Especially the young ones who are hearing about all these words like AAM and possibly detect and avoid and CUS and counter US and stuff. You'd realize that these are all, again, not new terminologies. They always existed, but in different, it was focused on a different way. Now the technologies are changing, a lot of new opportunities, especially for the young generation who are looking to get into the space. They may be hearing from others who are saying AI is going to take away many of the jobs and stuff. If it's like if many jobs are taken, new jobs are created. So
Yep,
there's going to be a whole new job market.
absolutely.
Just because you do engineering doesn't mean you'll be working in the engineering space. You could be working in legal space because your engineering background helps the legal side of it. If you're working in medical space, doesn't mean you will be a doctor someday, or you're working as a medical representative. You could be in the drone delivery space doing medical drone delivery operations because you understand those things. So you have to think about that, and then
True.
very important to also connect with people, learn what the others are learning. It's not going to be possible to attend every event out there. It's not going to be possible to take subscription for every single thing out there. But talking to people is going to be the key thing there. You want to make sure that you're asking questions and reach out to people who are ready to answer those questions. So those are things which I would say. And overall, I feel like to me, this work is about enabling technologies and keeping us safe, connected, and always ready. So those are things for me is focus. And then it's like whether helping drone company or AM, or you can say the infrastructure. End of the day, you have to think about this as a big industry that has many capabilities, and you're part of
Yes.
this industry, and your clients could be defense, it could be civil. You have to work based on their requirements. You have to talk to them. You have to understand where their limitations are. Just because you build something doesn't mean they have to use that. And at the end of the day, it's important to have meaningful progress. So that is where I see, and I feel excited that the next generation is going to basically enjoy what we are all working towards, more than us truly enjoying it. We may be able to enjoy it, but yeah, it
I
will be
hope
the next
so.
generation who enjoys it more because they will not have to deal with all these early on, policy and technology limitations.
Uncertainties and yes, absolutely, absolutely, you're right. Yeah, I do hope I get.
If you look at, be it aviation, be it cruise, going in a cruise, you're not thinking about how difficult it is to plan all these things. It's all easy. So it's like if you're traveling across the world for vacation or you're going on a cruise for vacation, you don't realize how many years it took to reach that point. That when you
Yes,
step in, you're not bothered who is the captain or how many staff they have, what is the safety case. You're more interested in taking a selfie and saying, hey, I'm at this cruise today or I'm at this country today. That's it. So that
your
level of safety is what we are working
your
towards.
computer, your everything around you. You don't know. You have no idea. Thankfully, I'm old enough that I remember the beginning all of that. But yeah, you're right. It's all about making sure that they have an easier road path ahead. Well, Dash, I think it was really great to have you on the podcast. I've been wanting to have you for a while, and it's been great to hear your thoughts and your experience. And again, welcome to come back anytime you want. We can talk about plenty of other things. You're doing a fantastic work. I'll make sure to put in also your company where people can find out more about you. And that's it. So I hope to see you soon again. And for everybody, I hope you've enjoyed this. Please let us know what you think. Like, share, comment, and let us know if this has changed your understanding of advanced air mobility. Perhaps you're starting a company or you're thinking about starting a company. Hopefully, you've learned a few things here, but we're always welcome your feedback. Thanks, Dash, for being on this podcast, and I hope to see you soon again.
Appreciate the invite. Thank you.